Good morning. How are you guys doing? Long time no see. It's been about a month. I'm doing well, but one thing has not changed, and that is our disclaimer. I am not a medical professional. Nothing I say is intended as health advice. Any major changes you make to your diet or any other aspect of your lifestyle is something you should check with a doctor with before enacting in your own life. Furthermore, I'm not a financial advisor. Nothing I say is a recommendation for investment. I am also a law-abiding citizen. Nothing I say is a admission of guilt. And lastly, but not leastly, all opinions are my own and are in no way affiliated with Google, YouTube, or any other platform that you may be listening to this on in the future. That being said, welcome to my stream. Looks like we got some people showing up. Max, thank you for being the first chatter today. What have I been up to? That is quite a question. Well, let's see. Let me try to remember when my last stream was. What did we talk about in the last stream? Was it any good? I don't think it was good. Laura, good to see you. That is amazing. I'm so happy you made it for a live one. That is great. And Arnav, welcome, welcome. Life is good. Let's see. Well, obviously I was going through some things a couple months ago. And I would say that those things left me temporarily impaired on a vibrational level. And at some point, I guess the AVN Awards rolled around. That was kind of like salt in the wound. A bunch of other stuff kind of spun off of that, which was also of a negative nature regarding my former situation, which I don't want to really get into. And long story short, I was feeling very disconnected spiritually. So while that is all negative, I was able to learn a lot. And I learned that indeed, you can lose the connection if you start vibing too low. But at some point, I decided to revert back to, wow, 43 people. Okay, we're doing stuff. You guys, one second. Let me cut off the story real quick since we seem to be making it into YouTube's traffic algorithm. Today, I did not put on the delay for the chat. So it is open chat today. So we will have a few trolls, as they've already started, as you can see. But we will have to take them with a grain of salt and a lesson that there are people like that exist in the world, somebody's children. So we're going to be tolerant and compassionate today. We got some chatters. Welcome, Noi. Megan is welcome and cluing us in on the tornado that happened last night. And we got love from Australia. So we're doing pretty good. Anyways, that being said, so things were looking down, but I decided to do what I normally do, and that's to meditate on it, pray on it a little bit. And I went and asked for a release, and I received a release. and suddenly things started basically overnight changing. And so I went into, as soon as I sensed the vibe change, I went into a rather deep state of surrender, right? And this is basically the story. I'll tell you the story, and then we can go ahead and we can talk about whatever you guys want. We can. I didn't pick out a topic today, but I will tell you guys the recent story of how the universe kind of took the reins, right? So I was somewhat heartbroken. I was stressing over this this woman that I had a very brief encounter with. And we'll get into more into not the details of that or that relationship, but more into the things that I learned from it, and also the pitfalls that we have acquired knowledge of regarding the spiritual process and how it changes a person's ability to not only empathize, but to connect with somebody on a metaphysical level, which is possibly something you would want to do with somebody, and also something you really might not want to do with somebody, depending what kind of person that you're talking about. But that's for later conversation. Anyways, so from a deep state of surrender, where I went to several locations that were meaningful to me, and I reclaimed them and called my power back to those locations, which had lost their luster for a little while. I was suddenly and immediately answered by the universe, right? So I would have probably just immediately driven away and gone on an adventure, but the universe did not like that idea. The universe wanted me to sit down with my sorrows and digest them properly, right? So that's when, about right when the time when a giant polar cyclone vortex came into the United States, right? And basically it was a negative 10 Celsius in Texas, which is a very large state in the United States, which I needed to drive through to get to where I wanted to go. And sorry, guys, I gotta ignore the chat for a minute. We do have, Noi, if you can, do me a favor and just turn up the moderation to maximum. Just anything and everything, especially anything Jesus related. And also obvious trolley comments, they can be hidden from the channel forever. We don't need them. Okay. So that was a side note. Now, so the bomb cyclone came into the United States. It was negative 10 degrees Celsius. I couldn't leave, couldn't go anywhere, right? And I just had to like sit down and meditate on it, right? But the day that the cyclone passed, I got a call, random call, wasn't expecting it. And it was a friend, a very dear friend that I met in Sedona, right? On a previous very successful spiritual pilgrimage, right? And I get the call, I answer, and he said, "Hey bro, are you in Vegas?" I was like, "I am in Vegas." And he was like, "Well, I'm gonna be there in about 20 minutes. He's a truck driver. He was picking something up in a nearby place in Nevada." And so I was like, "Well, let's meet up." So we went and met up. And anyways, long story short, I'm talking to my buddy who's a truck driver, and he informed me that he was passing through Vegas on his way to Alabama. So I consulted the map. I looked at Alabama. I was like, oh yeah, Alabama's right by where I'm trying to go, which is Florida. And I was like, when are you going? He said, tomorrow. I said, all right, I'm going with you, right? And so, we set off the very next day. Off we go, right? And so we're driving on our way across the country, right? In tandem, 2 separate vehicles, right? And we had to stop in Tucson, right? My buddy had family in Tucson. I have friends in Tucson. So I am driving through Tucson, and I decided to call one of my buddies that's living in Tucson, right? And then, this is where things got interesting. So while I was in a state of surrender and I was just going with the flow. Long story short, never shortens the story. True, guilty. Well, it could have been much longer. I can stretch a one sentence into paragraphs if I really put my mind to it. But anyways, I go to Tucson. I hadn't been back in Tucson in a couple of years, and I seen my friend that I grew up with, and previously he was working on a project where he was planting a cactus garden, right? So I reappeared at my buddy's house, the shaman, and now 2 years later, his cactus garden had quintupled, I would say, at least. Much larger, a much larger, whatchamacallit, cactus garden was now in existence. So when I seen the cactus garden, I said, just jokingly, I was like, maybe it's time to sit with San Pedro, right? San Pedro cactuses. And my buddy, without hesitation, he said, you know what? You're right. But it takes a long time to brew, so we're gonna have to go cut some right now. So my buddy goes out to the garden, he takes his little knife and whoosh, hacks off about 3 yay big pieces of San Pedro cactus, right? And so we sit in there and we carve off the little stickers and, we prepare the whole thing. We put it in the pot, we add the water, and we get it brewing, right? So we brewed the brew for about 12 hours, right? And now I was familiar with mescaline. I've never done it, but I thought that I knew something about it. Anyway, so I was kind of preparing myself. I had eaten mushrooms before in the past. I was preparing myself for like a mushroom style experience. I knew that it lasts a really long time. I was maybe a little bit nervous about it, but I was trusting in the universe, right? And so the next day we wake up in the morning, empty stomach, and for breakfast we drink San Pedro cactus brew, right? And it tastes really bad. I'll give you that. This is the downside of it. The downside is definitely the flavor. The flavor was not good. It was very unpleasant. But we drank it. And for about 30 minutes, I felt a bit nauseous, and I fought the urge to regurgitate the cactus brew. So I just laid in the sun, let the sun charge me up and hit me, and I just muscled through it, right? And then the most amazing thing happened. Hey. You. Sorry, Sam is also present. So I muscled through the nausea. And then something happened very different than what I expected. There was no anxiety or harsh takeoff, similar to mushrooms or anything like that, but rather a nice, gentle euphoria just kind of took over, right? Everything became ultra HD, ultra clear. My vision became extremely acute. And rather than the racing thoughts and so on and so forth that I've encountered with other things, again, like mushrooms, maybe like cannabis, nothing like that. Instead, my entire mind just went quiet. I just felt my heart open up, right? And as my heart opened, I felt like all this stress that had been holding me down for like 2 months just completely just evaporated. Not in a harsh like way, but just in a gentle, it just like washed it all away. Just like as if it never happened, right? And I just felt immediately plugged back into that source that has allowed all of these streams for the last 2 years to happen. The thing that I was disconnected from, the reason why I canceled the last 3 streams, because it just wasn't there, it just wasn't flowing. I was just felt like all I felt was connection to my little monkey brain. I was like, how am I going to stream with monkey brain? Anyways, just removed everything negative from me and just plugged me back in. And even during the time, I was like, this doesn't feel like necessarily like an effect of the plant. Like I was like, this feels like something that changed inside of me, right? And sure enough, here we are about a week later, and it has remained permanent. I've remained plugged back in. I've remained back at that spiritual peak, and I've remained without even the slightest glimpse of the negative emotions that were bothering me before. In fact, I think it even took some extra negative emotions that I didn't even realize I was struggling with, and just so amazing. So anyways, so the universe snowed me in with my thoughts to digest that for about a week, chose the exact timeline in which that I would embark on this journey, reconnected me with the shaman who was growing the cactuses since basically the start of my spiritual onset. Healed all of my woes, right? Plugged me back in, and then set me on a journey across the country, right? So we continued going across the country, right? And then I arrived in Florida a few days later, right? So I had this amazing, super smooth drive, right? And I also discovered a really cool place along the drive, which also intuitively I found. I was just driving and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna have a coffee. So I looked for a coffee roastery nearby where I was at, and it, brought me off the highway a little bit. And then I got there, and it was called Coast Roast. And I was like, okay, Coast Roast, I must be near the coast. I was like, I wonder what the hell the coast looks like in Mississippi, right? And I'm thinking like it's gonna be like some kind of like swamp, or, I just never really heard anything about the beach in Mississippi. I never really heard much about Mississippi at all, other than that there's a big river, and I assumed that there was a big delta there somewhere, and that it would be a bit swampy or whatever. Anyway, so I get down to this Gulf port, and it turned out to be one of the prettiest little towns I've seen in a long time. Like, it was perfect white sand beaches. It had this nice like plantation style Southern charm thing going on. It was super clean, felt safe, had, cool shops and all that. And there was big giant casinos right on the water, which was really awesome too, even though I haven't gambled in a while. That was cool. Continued on. And then I got to Florida and landed in a cool spot. Been around some amazing people. Having a good time, feeling good, loving the weather. Everything's good. So now my only question is, what the hell do I do with this streaming project? Because while I do feel reconnected and I do feel that I can probably answer some questions from that connection, I have learned so much in the past few months that I've also uncovered the reality. Sam! The reality that I have a long way to go on this journey. I got a long walk to walk still. Hey, chill. But, that's probably partially because, Bud, if you don't stop that, come here. You want to go in the room? Come here. It's probably partially because I was doing as most people do when they're on their journey, and that's like isolating and meditating and being in silence and so on and so forth. So this little experiment of trying a relationship clued me into the reasons why most spiritual people, especially those on the renunciate path, kind of forego interactions with the opposite sex, especially of super romantic nature. And then what also I realized is that I don't know if this is an ability that everyone's always had, or that many people have, or that I just never had, and that I uncovered in retrospect. But, during those 2 months when I was really, really, really low, I was experiencing a lot of emotions and negative things, which I never had experienced before in my entire life, really. Anytime that I had experienced negativity with a relationship or anything else like that, I experienced it in a completely different manner. And now I realize that it is possible to bond yourself with somebody, even somebody that you don't know that well, to an extent that you can absolutely feel their emotions, even from a great distance. And so it's now since being released from all those emotions and things, I realized that they weren't my emotions at all, but rather that I had made the mistake of bonding myself with somebody that I didn't really know that well. And that in doing that when we split ways, that I was somehow metaphysically experiencing whatever it is that they were experiencing. You know what I'm saying? Be it just as a side effect of this relationship, or just in general, that these are the types of emotions that person had battled with for a long time. And so in some way also, I don't really know because I haven't talked to that person, but part of me hopes that I took those with me and that they're not experiencing those emotions anymore, and that I took them into myself and transmuted them with the cactus. But I've not had the opportunity to confirm that. And I hope that that's the case. But if it's not, then it's not. But if it is, it's a pretty interesting development and a pretty interesting discovery, because yeah, I mean, what more could you want? Okay, one second. Let me hide these people real quick from the chat. And then I'm going to go back and read the chat, and I'm going to answer questions. You guys, if you want to ask some questions, we can ask. Again, sorry about the trolls and stuff. You guys, I just, since it's been a long time since I streamed, I decided to just leave it open to see what happens. And we're getting traffic. That part's good. So yes, you guys also too, for those, since it seems to be the main topic, my eyebrow is indeed something that I have done intentionally. So, you know, there is that. It's not an accident, you guys. I waxed my eyebrows for decades. And I decided at some point that as part of my my privilege that accompanies me as being an extremely, extremely well-endowed man, that I do not have to pluck my eyebrows anymore. That in fact, I get plenty of attention from very high quality women. Even with a single eyebrow, I don't need two of them. So, this is a conscious decision that I've made. And this is the last we're gonna talk about the eyebrows today, but because there's so much eyebrow attention going on, I thought that I should clarify that. So I'm going back to the very top of the chat, you guys. We're gonna start all over. So you guys, be patient. If you made a comment more recently, I'm gonna get through this chat today. It's been a while, but we will finish the chat today. I'm totally confident of that. All right, here we go. Back to see. Laura says, it's in the past and now looking forward, and it seems like you've been improving a lot. I have. You know, in fact, I will say one very interesting side effect, which another discovery, maybe not on the spiritual side, but as far as like my own physical self, my body side, you know, I don't know if it was just from the interaction with a woman or if it was the actual physical exercise associated with having sex daily after not having sex for so long. But I pretty much got like a total overhaul of my physique. I don't know if it's just because my testosterone went banging up from being, you know, in a situation where my biological self was like, all right, it's time to man up. Or if it was just because I was like so much more, I was using all these muscles that I used so much for so many years that it triggered some type of muscle memory thing or whatever. But my entire physique just did like an overhaul with like basically almost no real increase in effort other than that I was just having a lot of sex. So I don't know what happened there, but I'm running with it. Now I've decided to take that torch and roll with it. So we are increasing through further exercise at this point. But yeah, really interesting thing there. I don't know exactly what happened. It could have been a combination of the both. Perhaps my body decided to produce more testosterone and had muscle memory kick back in with the sex thing. But it worked out really well. I'm pretty happy. Max says, what would it take for you to visit AVN? What would it take for me to visit AVN? You know, see, the thing about AVN that I mainly, like, I was in Vegas during AVN this year, aside from the fact that there was people I really didn't want to see this year there. The main reason why I avoid avian is because there's something called the avian flu, which is a funny little play on words there. But every year everyone gets fucking sick. And like this year when it started, like I knew someone that had the cold, I knew someone that had the flu, I knew someone that had COVID, and I was like, it's all gonna be there. I was like, I'm good. Even though my immune system is pretty much bulletproof, and I was tempted to go test it out on that regard. But I just wasn't feeling it. I was like, it was a compounding issue. It was a compounding issue. So, anyways, but of the 4 times that I've driven coast to coast, or nearly coast to coast, this was definitely the smoothest and the best. I was just like locked in. But yeah, what would it take for me to visit avian? I guess, I mean, I hate to sound like a total whatever, but you know what I'm saying? Probably money. I mean, if someone paid me enough, I'd go. You know, perhaps if this project or any other project starts taking off at some point, I might, you know, get an actual booth myself there one day. But as of right now, when I was just kind of in my woes and whatever, and there was definitely people there I want to see, wasn't really interesting to me this year. So someday maybe I'll go back. Okay, let's see. There's Megan said there's a tornado. Hope everyone's safe with that. Laura said, are you still traveling around? I am. Oh, Noise says, how's the trip? The trip is going great. I hope all my other answers answered that, but it's going absolutely amazing, far exceeding my expectations. I'm extremely happy with my current situation where I'm at right now. And yeah, I'm loving Florida. The weather's perfect. You know, place where I'm at right now is got quite a lot of wildlife. There's wild pigs and coyotes and iguanas and lizards and birds and everything. Loving it. So it's going well. And as far as traveling around, I am not so much traveling at this moment. I'm probably definitely going to do minimize on the traveling side for the next month or so. Just because the weather is perfect here, and I'm gonna try to kind of see how this area works out as a home-based establishment. It was quite the trek from coast to coast, but I'm trying to work out a situation where I can also start including air travel back into my travel situation, which has been difficult with Sam. And I also want to explore more of the East Coast while I'm over here, so I'm going, but since the weather is not real great this time of the year on most of the East Coast, I am embracing Florida fully and wholeheartedly, and then at some point I will expand from here. Let's see. JC says, what is a troll? A troll is a person that just most likely was not raised well by their parents, that possibly were verbally abused, maybe even physically abused at some point, possibly also not, at the top of the social totem pole in elementary school or middle school, so on and so forth. And as such, they vent and express themselves by sitting on their phone for probably way too many hours, scrolling through live feeds and whatnot, just looking for anything that they can feed off of to talk shit and try to make themselves feel better from the safety of their own home or wherever they may be crawling. And to those people, we have a lot of compassion because we know that there's a reason why that they're acting out and being like that, when they could be doing so many other things, so many positive things with their life. But instead of doing something positive with their life, they are using this anomaly of the internet, low latency streaming, and mass social connection to try and bring other people down in an attempt to make themselves feel greater. And that is a troll. So we pray for them. We hope that they find the wisdom in changing their ways and try to use the tools of the 21st century in a more positive, holistic fashion. That's all I have to say about that. Let's see. Tracy Baum says, I've never watched your lives before. I'm quite curious. Well, here you are. Feel free to ask any questions. These are almost always question and answer based streams. I very rarely come on here with any kind of thought towards what we will talk about, other than today, obviously, I needed to catch everyone up on my journey and so on and so forth. But yeah, this is the people's choice. We do whatever flows. Let's see. That's good to see you as well. Hey Dar, what's up? JC, True Seeker, what's up? What's up? Cyranium says, I shake the dust off this place as testimony against them. I don't know what you're talking about, but sounds good to me. Peaceful Black Cat says, only you can save you, and that is true at some sense, for sure. Wow, I can't believe how many people we had to like literally block from here. See, do I have any friends in Clovis? I don't know. I have family in Clovis. Crazy enough. Friends? Debatable. But, I mean, I like my family. So, I do have family in Clovis. What's happening in Spain, Merhi? John's, this is indeed real. Peaceful Black Cat says Euphoria is good. Euphoria is very good. And, to expand on the San Pedro thing. So San Pedro is known as the grandfather of all psychedelics, right? And truly, I want to say that it was the most gentle, purest, healing thing that I've ever done as far as eating plants goes. Okay, like it was, if you have any type of emotional healing that you want to do, San Pedro's the one, all right? It's illegal, ceremonial in many places, it's a known thing, and I highly, highly, highly recommend it. There was no come down, there was literally no ill effect at all other than the taste and 30 minutes of nausea to start off. It was a perfect experience. I don't know who Anthony Davis is, Curtis Knight. I assume that the Wizards are a sports team, but I also don't know what sport that they play. So that's pretty much where my mind's at. The Unibrow is incredible. Well, thank you, Wolfman. We'll let you stay since you chose passive aggressiveness instead of outright trolling. Goondad EDC says, if you could go back and relive one day from my past, what would it be? Go back and relive one day from my past, what would it be? It would be the moment that I experienced unconditional love and got to see through every human's eyes simultaneously while looking down at the earth as if it was a little ball that could fit into my hand. That was definitely the moment. Let's see. Am I a dolphin trainer nowadays? I can't get my dolphin to do a backflip. Is my water mammal broken? Sorry, that was a deleted comment, but I thought it was interesting. So I don't know. I've never, my dolphins just kind of hang out. They don't really do tricks and stuff. Let's see. Laura says, so glad you found something to cleanse you, even stuff that was blocking you unconsciously. Yeah, you know, it's one of those things, like lesson learned. You got to be really, 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 really super careful. You know, it's like, there's more going on than, you know, okay, let me dial this back because I know I'm losing some people with the whole woo-woo talk. But I've actually linked this into, I've linked the whole metaphysical woo-woo aspect into the neuroscience aspect, as I often do. And, you know, it's like there's been a study showing, like, for example, women tend to always release oxytocin during sex, right? Which is, oxytocin's the love molecule, right? So, by repeating that act over and over again, like a woman can, this is all just what the science says. I'm not saying that I've confirmed this or whatever, but supposedly a woman eventually can learn to love somebody, right? Through repeated sexual acts, right? Because of the release of oxytocin, right? Versus a man supposedly only releases dopamine during sex unless they're actually already in love, in which case they release oxytocin, but a lot of it, right? So, you know, when I set out into that whole experiment, a big part of the reason why I entered into something with somebody whom I did not, whom I would have never previously to that considered a potential like mate or someone that I would really want to be involved with, or in retrospect, after finding out a lot more, that I would ever have, you know, probably had contact with at all to begin with. But at that moment when I decided to go down that grand adventure, I was vibing really, really high from like a place of unconditional love, right? To where I didn't really think any of those details mattered, right? And I was thinking like, you know, I've had all these issues with relationships and stuff in the past, but I was like, it was always, you know, those issues and so on and so forth were never, like I hadn't uncovered this phenomenon of unconditional love, right? So I wanted to see what would happen from that place. And the aforementioned things is what happened, right? And so I realized that, you know, once you've unlocked this unconditional love for all of humanity and all of mankind, you actually have to be more careful rather than less careful, rather than being like, oh, I can just, you know, whatever. You got to be even more careful, because like if we go back to the neuroscience of like a man only releases oxytocin through sex rather than dopamine if they're in love, then if you're in an unconditional state of love, then in some way, perhaps you're operating on the more feminine principle of releasing oxytocin anytime that you have sex, right? Which also goes in, furthermore elaborates onto the science and the interesting side effects that we had uncovered previously, that after my nearly 1 year of celibacy, rather than being ultra sensitive and losing any ability to control myself sexually or so on and so forth, that instead I realized that I was much enhanced, right? For those who had partaken in other content that I created and so on and so forth, you know what I'm saying? I think everybody will have noticed that my post-spiritual awakening content was much more intense and in longer duration than my pre-spiritual awakening content, right? And I think that is because after unlocking unconditional love, and let's also remember that, especially for a man, that the spiritual awakening process is very much about awakening the feminine side of the self and merging it with the masculine, right? That you take on some of these feminine attributes, one of which may be, scientifically speaking, the ability or the caveat of secreting, what's the hormone that we were talking about? Oxytocin, every time that you have sex, right? And that, yeah, basically it forms a way tighter bond. And so this is probably part of the reason why people on a spiritual path take sexual relationships and so on and so forth so seriously, because it is serious. Because it's no longer a casual thing. It's no longer just a dopamine hit. It's no longer just a little dopamine rush. Now all of a sudden it's whoosh, merger. And you got to be really careful about what you merge with. You know what I'm saying? And it takes time. It takes a long time to really uncover who a person is, right? Everyone puts their best foot forward, right? And the most manipulative and devious of people use manipulative tactics like mirroring, all right? So now if you're vibing super high spiritually and you're operating from unconditional love, right? And you're bringing all this positivity, you're operating from a place with no ulterior motives and so on and so forth, right? That that the most manipulative people will be the most difficult to read, because when they start mirroring back to you something, they're mirroring back to you that spiritual self that you embody, and that you start thinking that you're dealing with somebody that's completely different than who you're really dealing with, because what you're getting is really just a mirroring back of yourself, right? Now, of course, some of that might be real, because you really might be bringing out the absolute best in somebody, right? Maybe you are bringing out something that they didn't even know was there through their mirroring of you. And we can only hope that that leaves a lasting impression, that leaves a lasting imprint, and that person will be able to go forward in life and remember when they acted like that, and be able to remember how different life was from that perspective, right? But as soon as you remove that energy, as soon as you no longer are holding the mirror up to that person to where they want to reflect back the best of themselves, or even a part of themselves that doesn't maybe even really exist in real life, that now the real self will come out, the real person will come out, right? And if you've bonded with them to a level that you're feeling their emotions metaphysically, even from unlimited distance across the earth, that you might you can end yourself up in a really negative pickle. So you got to take your time with it. You got to really, 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 really know somebody. You got to remember that even the best people, the most purest people that have no ill intentions, no ulterior motives, are still going to hold their best foot forward, right? In a new situation. That the worst people with the most, not just even say worst people like that they're bad, but like the people with the most darkness, the people with the most trauma, the people with the most baggage, right? That the people who don't really have a true sense of self, that they don't even know who they really are, right? That they're gonna just mirror back to you whatever you're giving them, and that's even makes it even more difficult to know what you're dealing with, right? And well, that's fine if you're just hanging out with somebody, or you're trying to help somebody, or you want to be somebody's friend, and so on and so forth. But if you're operating from unconditional love to the point that your self is going to release oxytocin in any sexual encounter, you should be more careful. Or should I say, you should be more patient in taking time to get to know that person, who they really are, what darkness they actually contain, and also the good sides of things, the good things that maybe you wouldn't mind, taking on as part of yourself. But you don't get to pick and choose always. Sometimes you kind of it's like a all or nothing kind of thing. So you got to be careful. Anyways, that's part of my discovery. Let me go back to the chat because I'm starting to be repetitive on that one. Let's see. Sorry, guys. I already addressed the eyebrow situation. Okay, let's see. We definitely got some weird people in comments. Sorry, I'm trying to get through the chat. Sorry, there's a lot of trolls. Let's see. What's up, Anthony? What's up, Chelsea? Les Pinu. We've heard the caveman jokes before. Name go here. Welcome. Do I astral project? I have astral projected in the past. It was towards the beginning of my journey. I haven't tried to do it much since then. My experience with astral projection is that it's awesome, but me personally, when I'm astral projecting, my body doesn't breathe. I haven't figured out how to control. Well, actually, I shouldn't say that. I have done it other ways, but I don't know if that's the difference between astral projecting and remote viewing. I guess are totally different. Anyways, in astral projecting, I find that my body doesn't breathe while I'm flying away, and so while it's a very good experience, it's never fun to get all of a sudden forcibly yanked back into your body to find out that your body hasn't been breathing for however long, and that you are suddenly needing oxygen really badly. So you're like, ugh. And so that's been my experience with astral projecting. However, with remote viewing, I find myself to not have that problem, and that I'm very conscious of where I'm at physically within my body while also viewing another location. So maybe those things are similar, maybe they're not, but that's been my experience with it. So I haven't really tried to astral project much beyond then. And the only time I've ever been able to remote view was when I was kind of in like post breakthrough, like like samadhi kind of thing, like really vibing really, really, really high. Almost like maybe the word is Turiya. I don't know. I could be wrong about that. I shouldn't be using words in other languages that I don't really fully understand, but we don't have words in this, in our language, so we're doing our best. Welcome, James Chamber from the military. Thank you for your service. Apple juice before bed. Helps you go to another plane. Interesting. I never heard that, but we will check that out. Empathy. Yeah, empathy is a big part of the whole thing, but it's like empathy is something that people is largely misunderstood. Almost, I would say that the vast majority of the population confuses sympathy with empathy. Empathy, in my own, I at some point defined empathy as, I redefined empathy. And by the way, thank you so much, Noi, for the donation. But I redefined empathy as the ability to understand the scope of perception. That's my own personal definition of empathy. But the depth of that, far, far deeper, far greater than what I ever imagined. So through understanding the scope of perception, to truly, truly, truly understand that you can't understand anyone else's life and the things that went into making them however they are, creating their personality, so on and so forth. Their traumas, their strengths, their skills, their weaknesses, so on and so forth. That in fact you can understand that. You can experience another person's life. You can experience another person's emotions. You know what I'm saying? But this is getting all super metaphysical, woo-woo. We're all one, quantum entanglement, all that. You know what I'm saying? But it's possible. If you meditate on somebody, you can do it. And you can actually do it on such a massive scale that you could do it with everybody on the planet combined at the same time. 98 people just showed up in here. This is getting weird. This is our all-time highest room count. Welcome. I'm sure, I don't even want to know what's going on at the bottom of the chat, but Noi, good luck. Good luck. I love you, Noi. Let's see. All right, so here we go. Chelsea likes the eyebrows. Let's see. Dia Matt says, someone gave me $30, man. What? $30 for what? Oh, you were talking about Noi. Yeah, Noi hooked us up. We love him. You guys don't leave it all up to my mod to carry the whole thing. Like, you know what I'm saying? It's okay to, it's okay to offer some verbal encouragement in the right direction to the people that are bogging down the chat with weirdness. Wow, 130 people in here. That's crazy. Okay, so let's see. I'm just browsing through the lives today. All right, you can stay, Tom. You know what? This eyebrow might actually turn out to be like one of my greatest strengths, at least in the streaming department. When I had the beard, we really were fighting a lot of caveman, Neanderthal comments, so on and so forth. But I feel like now that I shaved, it's like the eyebrow is really just like stealing the show. Nobody really cares about anything else. It's just, just is what it is. But it seems to be getting us it's working for the algorithm, so we're doing good. Let's see, Ramadan in 2 weeks. Oh, we're gonna Ramadan it up. We got this time. With Ramadan, I find that my normal eating schedule is actually I eat less than even somebody during Ramadan, but it's just like the timing thing. It's like I like to have my midday meal, my one meal a day, midday, but it always kind of messes me up to try to do it either before or after dark. So, but we're gonna try it again this year, Noi, in solidarity. Let's see. Peaceful Black Cat says, high quality women, I am disappointed. What makes a woman high quality? That's a good question. Does make a woman quite high quality? It's hard to put into words. I guess the same thing that makes anyone high quality, right? Virtue. You know what I mean? If you really just look at the 7 deadly sins and the 7 godly virtues, even from a completely non-Christian kind of way or a non-religious kind of way, and you just look at the virtues themselves, right? And if you want to take it a step further and take these sins and these virtues and realize that there's like a correlating chakra between each one of these sins and virtues, right? That this is really the way that we can judge anyone's quality, male or female, on basically almost every level, right? Even physical health is going to tie into these virtues, right? And what you're going to realize is that there's like a corresponding sin with a corresponding virtue with a corresponding chakra, right? And by diagnosing the self or another person, you can very clearly see where their energy lies, right? Because the sin and the virtue create a zero-sum situation, right? In the same way that you can't be charitable while being greedy, right? You can't be diligent while being slothful, right? You can't be lustful while having chastity, right? You can't be wrathful while being humble. You see what I'm saying? So, these corresponding sins and virtues, you know, kind of show you where somebody's energy lies, or how someone's energy is flowing, right? If somebody is living in a kind of low vibrational place, it might not be a permanent situation, but you would, if you are accounting for someone's vibrational field, right? Before bringing them into your life or, you know, exchanging too much whatever, anything, that it's good to know where they're at. Because what happens is when two people, especially through sex, but it doesn't have to be through sex, when two people, you know, spend a lot of time together, what naturally happens is that balance is achieved. The same thing that happens in all things within this universe, right? It's a dualistic universe, and everything always finds balance eventually. So you might be vibing in all the way up in that I am that vibration, right? And somebody else might be really in like a fear state where they're constantly thinking about everything that might go wrong or so on and so forth, da, 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 da. Then what's going to happen, hopefully, well, not hopefully, what will happen is it's going to meet in the middle, right? This person in the fear state will probably start shedding their fear. They'll probably maybe even move past lust and maybe even find themselves in an area where they have an increased amount of willpower, right? But the other person, they're going to have taken a fall, and they're going to have taken a dive back into the 3D realm, and they're going to feel, you know, a little bit more motivated by success within the 3D realm and less focused on the highest of the high, right? And this is where comes like the idea of being a healer, right? That somebody can be a healer, that somebody can be an alchemist, right? Is really based upon your ability to hold your frequency, to hold your space, or to return to your space, to return to your frequency after taking on someone else's poison, right? To transmute that. And so, so there is that. So while there is, or, you know, we can look at everything as one, that there is like a state of non-duality, that in some sense, the spirit that invigorates us all is one, and that there is no difference between a high quality person or a low quality person except for a moment, because sometimes it can take a long time to grow, but it can also take a second, right, to change your vibration. And so maybe it was misspoken of me to say a high quality woman instead of a high quality person, but there is definitely a spectrum, and not everybody is going to improve in this lifetime. That moving through these vibrational fields is something that can take multiple lifetimes, right? And that even if you are at a high spot, you can become at a low spot. And even if you're a low spot, you can come at a high spot, but it's not something that you're gonna do if this is your first time on Earth. You know what I'm saying? So, there's that. That guy says he knows what we're going through. Back to the chat, you guys. Jedediah says people are still talking shit about. Let's see. This Geico commercial. You guys stop stealing my jokes. I made up the Geico thing. Let's see. Poppy says, hey, money is a big reason why we do shit anyways. That's true. That is true. Sadly, that is an unfortunate reality in our world today. Thank you, Gina. You guys, sorry, I'm trying to get through the chat. It just takes a moment because there is a lot of people here today. Poppy says, bro was laying pipe as a career and now is turning to peace. And that is true. That is a good observation. You know what I'm saying? It's crazy to also realize, like, you know, you think that you reached the absolute pinnacle of laying pipe, right? But then you realize that you barely just scratched the surface, that most people are really bottom dwellers in the laying pipe frequency, right? But that in fact, and that by just going 10% above being a bottom dweller, that you're already standing, you've already made your way into the greatest of the greats, into the Hall of Fame of pipe laying. But in fact, that you had really only covered 10%. There's an entirely another whole spectrum of laying pipe in the etheric level of laying pipe, right? And that requires peace and connection to the source that gave you the pipe in which that you are going to lay. You see what I'm saying? It's always another level, you guys. Welcome, Susan. John Taffer Official says, please forgive me, it's my first time on your stream. Are you allowed to ask questions about your former profession? You are allowed to ask questions about the former profession as long as they do not include another person's name or identity, and that it's framed in an educational manner, and doesn't contain any explicit words or descriptions of that former profession. And if you can somehow make it tie that former profession and those acts that were committed in the former profession into a verbatim that is somehow linked to God or spirituality or the source, whatever you want to call it, meditation, anything, wellness, self-improvement, neuroscience, whatever, anything like that, then you'll get a massive bonus, and I'll be way more likely to answer the question. Cigar Man says, where in Florida are you now? I am in Orlando. Chelsea Lebu says, are you Arab? I am European by blood. Born in the United States, in fact. But nonetheless. Let's see. Lawin says, what happened to you? Don't know. I've been living my life for 40 years now. I mean, what didn't happen to me is the better question, I guess. What's my channel about? My channel is about whatever you want it to be about. You know what I'm saying? It's where I'm here for you. This is your rodeo. I'm just, you know what I'm saying? You're navigating. I'm just driving. That's all. The colonizer of the century. Wow, look at that. Jason says, you seem cool and laid back. So Laura says, they probably do need love, but they're definitely not getting it like that. That is true. The trolls need love too. Brave, good to see you. Good to see you again. The worst thing you can do to trolls is ignore them. I know, that's why, most of them will be long gone before I ever even read their comments, because I'm like barely down the chat right now, but let them, they gotta live too, I guess. Is that a warrant? I don't know what you mean. Let's see. This comes out with the eyebrows. How to overcome food addiction or severe attachment to food as a cope. I mean, just gotta have willpower. You know what I mean? If you can do one real fast, just one real fast, maybe like just a 2-day dry fast, or maybe like a 4-day water fast. I'm not a medical professional. Nothing I say is a health advice. You'll pretty much conquer that. But there's how to get through that first one. I don't know. You gotta have willpower. But if you get through just one, you'll never look at food the same way again. You gotta make it out the other side though. You gotta get to that point where you realize that you've not eaten for days, but you're also not hungry. You gotta make the shift. And it exists. And once you pass that you can go on and on and on. And if you can get through it a second time, If you get through it once and you get through it a second time, you can pretty much expect some things to be happening for you spiritually. But yeah, I personally find dry fasting to be far more effective and powerful in that manner than wet fasting. And for me, you know, it's really important to be hydrated going into a dry fast, so that you don't hurt yourself, whatever. And try to make your last meals things that contain a lot of water, like fruit or whatever, you know what I'm saying? Yeah, it's just, to me, like the water fast is like not worth the extra weight for the good effects. It's just as miserable and not as beneficial. But it is actually good to do a water fast, like maybe your very first time or your first couple times, just because you do need the water to get out a lot of that toxic buildup and that toxic residue. You know what I'm saying? So there's that. And what the fuck happened? Let's see. And also eat whole foods. Like release all. You gotta. First step is really you got get rid of anything out of your diet that has like any type of preservative in it, any type of chemical stuff. Like start eating like only things that like your great grandparents, like if they seen it right now, that they'd recognize it. You know what I'm saying? Things that came off a tree. Something like that. You know what I'm saying? You guys keep bringing up the dolphins thing. Yeah, you know, I do have this thing with dolphins. I'm actually really excited to doing some dolphin stuff out here in Florida. You know, my dolphins are back in California. And come to find out in retrospect that the California dolphins are actually not that friendly to people. So it was kind of like a even more of a rare phenomenon to have dolphin friends in California, but apparently the dolphins out here in Florida are quite friendly and like people. So I'm interested to see if they will respond to my call the way that my California dolphins do. Let's see. Someone says, you seem to know a lot about unconditioned hair. Yep, that's true. You know, it's one of those things, like once you know, you can't unknow. You know what I'm saying? Like once you realize like how much waste from the petrochemical industry and, you know, agricultural chemical industry and all types of different chemical industries, you know, so you realize how much of that's going into your hair products and your lotion and your food for that matter, you will realize exactly why you harbor so many negative emotions and that your physical self is not aging properly and so on and so forth. So it's one of those things. 222, look at that. So the, yeah, it's one of those things. It's one of those things. But, you know, you've been conditioned to be conditioned. So enjoy those chemicals. Let's see. Anytime versus every time. That is a very big difference. Law in Wonderland says, I don't know, something. Let's see, Arnis Sora says, I'm sorry if you've discussed this already. What triggered this awakening and wanting to know and understand more? This is a great question. And I have answered this, but I also realize that we have like hundreds of hours of streams now and that not everybody has went through and watched it. So now let me explain this now. If any of this talk has been interested at all, if you're going, okay, how does someone go from adult film star to whatever's going on here? right? And even if you don't understand it, you don't like the way that I look, but you can recognize a certain level of peace and contentment and so on and so forth, happiness, whatever you want to, whatever the emotion is that you desire. If you can sense that within me and you're going like, how did that happen? How did somebody that had the life of many men's dreams, but never had happiness, never had contentment, never was at peace, and how that they can move into a completely different realm such a short amount of time, to where they no longer value any of those things, so on and so forth, then with a very open mind, I would prescribe to you watching all of the stream recordings on this channel, but in chronological order. And I say with an open mind because I was going through something which is known within like the yoga world, so on and so forth, as a Kundalini awakening, right? And so this is essentially, if you want to, for those who aren't into religion or spirituality or yoga or anything like that, and are really stuck in like a, scientific frame of mind, through this process is basically what I think is happening on the physical level is that your brain starts producing DMT and probably a bunch of other stuff that no one's ever heard of while you're still alive, right? Not just when you're born and when you die like many people think it is, but rather you go through this third phase of evolution, almost like puberty, in the same way that your body suddenly goes through this change where you're producing all these like sex hormones and so on and so forth. On the other end of that is a phase similar to that, where a person goes through changes chemically, but at the opposite end of that spectrum, right? So you have this whole energy channel that goes basically the length of your entire body, right? From the root to the crown, right? And your energy is normally, most people's, is stuck kind of in this root area, right? It's the termination of these two big energy channels, this masculine and feminine energy channel, right? And there's another channel that goes in the middle. Anyways, once your brain starts producing DMT naturally on its own, releasing it, it triggers something called a Kundalini awakening, which, in my opinion, it also triggers a complete, total, like in the same way that like when you go through puberty as like a teenager, that you suddenly start growing hair and you're becoming more, your body changes physically. In this next phase, Kundalini awakening, which is suppressed through all these chemicals and shit that they put in our food, through the media, fear, and keeping you at a low, in a place where that doesn't happen. But if it does happen, it also creates physical changes. One of those physical changes is that all your nerves start growing. And you re-innervate all your muscles, all your organs, your entire spine grows, and you create this connection, that goes from the brain all the way down to your root chakra, which is, kind of in the gooch area, right? And what was the original question? Oh yeah, so I didn't know all this. But one day I was chanting, I watched a video by Sadhguru about the Om, like, it's a chant, right? It's the sound of creation. Many people probably have heard of it, so on and so forth. I didn't really know that it was, anything could happen. I just watched the video because I was into regenerative farming and he was doing the Save Soil movement. I seen the Om video. I was like, oh yeah, that sounds cool. Let me try that. So I was driving through the desert to Vegas one day. I'm driving through Death Valley. I'm chanting this Om for maybe an hour, 2 hours, something like that. and it triggered this Kundalini awakening or something. It triggered enlightenment, whatever it is, like. And the story's on here. But anyways, once that happens, as your body's going through, it goes from the bottom up, you know what I'm saying? It starts re-innervating all your organs and things, right? And you can also look at that if you don't want to be so scientific and you want to be a more yogi about it, you can think of those as chakras, right? And so as you're re-innervating these chakras, suddenly these different organs and so on and so forth, they have other functions than what they're most popularized for doing through mundane science, right? And as this happens, you have different experiences and so on. Sam, come here. Hey. And it takes a little bit. Sam, I said no. It takes a little bit of getting your footing when your body is literally flowing with, dude. When your body is literally pumping the most insane amount of DMT imaginable, like far greater than anything that is achievable through consumption of DMT. You know what I'm saying? Like you can't get there from ayahuasca or from smoking DMT or even smoking toad venom or whatever it is that people do. You can't get there, right? Like if you think about how your body works, think about how much saliva that you produce on a regular basis. Think about how much, sexual fluids or something that you can produce during an orgasm, so on and so forth. Imagine that your brain can also produce this copious amount of the purest, most human grade DMT or whatever you want to call it, that is a perfect match for your receptors within yourself, right? And that this is something that heals you, something that changes you, right? But that when have a low tolerance to it, that you've never experienced it before, that you're far out there, all right? So if you watch the whole streams all the way through, you will get to see many different phases of this awakening. But the tipping point was when I was chanting the Om for a couple hours, driving through the desert. This happened on September 11th, 2023 at 11:33 p.m. And yeah, feel free to whatever, because you can induce this this experience and this thing. But the thing is, and this is common, like in places like India and stuff that really like value spirituality, they have a network of, their society is built around the possibility of this happening, and they have places for you to go. They got people for you to talk to. They got ways to cope with this happening, because it's a beautiful thing. It's an absolutely beautiful thing. Like it heals you in a way that nothing else can. And I don't just mean physically, I mean mentally, emotionally, spiritually, every body that you contain within yourself that makes you yourself, it heals it all, right? And here in the Western society, when this happens, they just try to put you on psych meds, and they use it as a way to enslave you, right, with pills and things. And they cause grievous, irreversible damage by doing that, okay? So seeking out a Kundalini awakening is something possible. It's something that you can work towards. It's something that many people try to accomplish their entire lives and sometimes fail. But some people achieve it very rapidly. They say it's because of, you know, your progress in past lives carries on with you into new lives and so on and so forth. And I believe that to be true. But whatever you want to believe, it's not something that you do casually, because you need to be able to finish the process and not get stuck partially somewhere along the way where you're cuckoo, right? And this process takes about 3 years or so on the low end to finish. And if you're not taking care of yourself and you're doing everything wrong and so on and so forth, and even without the meds fucking you up and all that stuff, it can take like 12 years or something on like the longer end, right? And if you take pills, psych meds and things like that, it'll never finish, and you'll just be like completely broken for life. Now they say you can even die through this experience, and I believe that to also be true, right? So while I do say go watch it, learn about it, know what it is, understand that it's possible, watch it all and decide what you want to do before you decide, hey, yeah, it's cool, let's start fasting and let's do this thing, let's go Kundalini. Because most people in the West don't have a situation where they can take 3 years off of work. You know what I'm saying? To just meditate and fast and purge and cleanse and, you know what I'm saying, pray and so on and so forth. Most people don't have that option, right? And that's what you need if you succeed in initiating it, right? The initiation is the hard part. Once you initiate, you can't stop it. It's gonna finish eventually, unless you take pills or so on and so forth, and which means that you're just gonna like break yourself. You're gonna break the machinery that goes into it. But yeah, I just wanted to give the whole thing, because the very stable person that you're seeing right now is not necessarily the same person that you're going to witness throughout this entire journey. And not to say that anything that I said was wrong, or that anything that I said was whatever. It's just that every step along the way is such a multitude greater, that the understanding is also such a multitude greater, that there really is no way to predict or even know what the next step is any step along the way. No matter how much you think you've experienced, the next one is always bigger than what your imagination can contain. And so it might be interesting to know about, maybe whatever, but don't just jump into it. Watch it all. Invest the 100, 200 hours, whatever it takes to watch the streams before you decide to start messing around with your body, your mind, your soul, so on and so forth. All right, so back to the thing. Soul ties. Let's see, your logo looks like CBSI. I don't know. I made that like 15 years ago. Your reds has been there. That's good. Law, Wonderlands is facts. Could be. Okay. We're going up from here. We are going up from here. You guys, I'm trying to catch up. I don't know where we are in the chat, but we're going to try to make it today. Like, this is crazy, crazy traffic today. You know, people are really, another thing is, you guys, you know what, actually bypass that. I was going to talk about eyebrows, but Joey asked a good question. Says, why did you return to adult content? That is a very good question. And I wouldn't say that I fully returned. As I mentioned earlier, I hit a place where I was vibing so highly spiritually, and I was like adopting such a thought of non-duality, right? And I started seeing the goddess in all things, and I started realizing that there was no I started feeling, basically I wanted to bring unconditional love into the industry and see what effect that had, because one of the most interesting parts of this whole spiritual process that I've uncovered is the contagious aspect. And it's not just like contagious mentally, or that people become interested in spirituality or whatever. It's just that the peace itself that comes along with it spreads to others, right? And in some cases, people even start having spiritual experiences, breakthroughs and things around you without even trying. It's really, really, really weird and interesting how that happens, but it's not that unusual if you really think about other instances of things that we know about which happen regularly. Let's take, for example, a woman's period, right? You could pretty much set your clock by it. If a woman is, in her purity and her feminine and not stressed out, what I'm saying? Her cycle is going to be regular. It's going to be synced with the moon. Now, in a Kundalini awakening, which again is the other end of puberty, the thing that starts, that cycle for a woman, right? It's linked with the moon. Kundalini is also linked with the moon, okay? Now, they say that your cycle should be the same as whenever your moon is transiting your sun sign of your zodiac, right? And that this is when the seed is formed. This is the time in which you should be fasting. This is the time when you should be meditating. You should be avoiding any kind of stress, any kind of cortisol spike, anything like that, eating anything acidic, so on and so forth, right? So that you don't spoil that seed, right? Because the seed is planted in your solar plexus, and if you keep it clean and all that, like, it can rise to your brain, and that's when everything happens, right? So I kept, I was putting everything into my calendar, so on and so forth, whenever something would happen. And I noticed a pattern as well. Now, my pattern ended up not syncing up with when my moon is transiting Scorpio, which is my sun sign. But the day when I was chanting the Om, that first enlightenment happened, my moon was transiting Leo. And then I noticed that on most occasions, when another major upgrade happened, another breakthrough happened, right? Another chakra opened, however you want to think of it, that it also happened when my moon was transiting Leo. So there is a lunar cycle involved with the whole thing, right? Same as there is with a woman's period, but this happens to both men and women. Maybe even possibly, it could be somewhat of a difference between how it happens with men and women. I don't really know. Like, women obviously have Kundalini awakenings too, but the framework and the way that it all plays out seems to be a little bit different between men and women. So I don't have any experience with being a woman, so I can't really elaborate on that. But there's definitely a lunar cycle involved with the whole thing, right? And so once you have this initial breakthrough, so you go through spiritual puberty, you have your spiritual awakening, Kundalini awakening, whatever you want to call it, now the cycle has started, right? And so every month, you're going to have an opportunity after that to grow this seed and release this Amrita, they call it, right? And this Amrita is literally the best thing that you can ever experience. It's the highest level of pleasure, highest level of ecstasy, highest level of anything you can possibly experience. This is coming from somebody who has done drugs. This is coming from somebody that was an adult film star for many years, somebody that's been with 1,000 women or something. You know what I'm saying? Like, I did all the things. I was a pleasure seeker, right? for decades, right? This is also coming from someone that spent 4 years in prison and experienced some really low lows too, right? There's someone that has experience, right? And nothing, I mean, literally nothing is even a little bit close. Like, have you ever experienced something through, be it MDMA or any other kind of weird mistake that you make in your life? And it's amazing. If it's ever 10%, it will be a life-changing experience, even if it was induced by a substance or something like that. You know what I'm saying? Because it's that big. We're talking about the highest experience a person can have, right? You have an experience to do that. You have an opportunity to do that every month. Not only do you have an opportunity to do that every month, but if you do it, rather than having negative effects, like if you did a drug or something like that to try to achieve a high, you always have a hangover afterwards, right? You always have some kind of negative effect afterwards. In this situation, it heals you in a way that is completely inexplicable and unexplainable. I mean, you're talking about literally it de-ages you. Like, if you can master doing that every month, master it, where you never spoil a seed. Every month you hit the Hambrina. You will be your body will become physically immortal. You will never age if you can master that. It's that powerful. But again, this is something you have to dedicate your life to. You know, it's largely misunderstood. Most people don't understand why people go into like monasteries and things. They don't understand religious people that dedicate their life to God and renunciating and celibacy and so on and so forth. Most people have no clue why somebody would do something like that. They think that they were raised to do that, or they indoctrinated to do that, or they were brainwashed to do that, and so on and so forth. No. They tasted the Amrita, and nothing else ever mattered to them again. Because it's that good. Okay? It's worth giving up sex. It's worth giving up drugs. It's worth giving up meat. It's worth spending all of your time alone. It's worth sitting in silence. It's worth anything, any sacrifice that you could possibly make for it. It's worth it. That's why people do it. You know what I'm saying? So anyways, back to the original question is of why did I return to adult content, is that because of the contagious nature of that, the fact that sometimes, oh yeah, so what I was saying about the period and all that is that in the same way, like, you know, if you get a bunch of women, Sam, cut it out, dude. If you get a bunch of women together living in a house together, right? That their periods will sync up and become on the same day, right? And the same kind of thing happens if you're awakened, right? Of that, it will start triggering this awakening in other people, right? Which is another reason why you can't just be out there, whatever, doing anything. Anyways, I thought that I was going to, more so is that it triggers like an emotional healing. Suddenly everyone around you becomes in good spirits all the time for no given reason. All of a sudden everyone around you starts releasing their traumas and their negativity for no apparent reason, right? And in rare cases, if you're really vibing with somebody, they will literally have that aha moment and awaken themselves just from being around you, right? And so knowing that while I can stand by probably like 90% of the content that I created in the industry, like I really did put a lot of effort and sacrifice into, at some point, I made the shift to try to create more positive, romantic, wholesome style content. That I do have to still consider the industry itself, the adult industry itself, a negative entity. It's having a negative effect on on the earth. And it's having that effect negatively, regardless of what positivity that I poured into it. And while I may not have to be responsible for the industry as a whole, I don't have to be responsible for my own karma and my own actions, not the karma of the entire industry just because I was part of it. That I did have to, at some point, admit that I was part of something that was negative and that I can't overpower the negativity there through content creation. But perhaps I was able to corrupt, the entity itself by going back in. So I thought that maybe by going into the industry, that I could rub off this, contagious spiritual aspect onto other people, and that through the very nature of the industry itself, of being everybody's doing everybody and everything and that by introducing these seeds of spirituality within the industry, that over time, that it could grow and corrupt the whole thing to either take it down or to help it morph into something predominantly good. So in doing that, somewhere along the way, I met somebody who I was vibing with on a certain level, and I got a little greedy, I guess, and started, or should I say, maybe I got a little full of myself and my power, and I started thinking, you know what, like, I wonder if I can purposefully awaken someone. And so in attempting that, there was some successes, but there was also a tremendous realization that I was playing with fire, and I didn't know that much about fire. So I learned a lot, and thankful to San Pedro for helping me right my wrongs instead of turning it into a nightmare that could have gone on forever and ever. But I'm better for it. I know more about it, and I won't be so frivolous in the future. But through that process, I was also I realized that I couldn't just shut everything down for another person instantly and be like, here, awaken, that I had to create a path out. And so that path out for me was creating content that I thought spoke to people on a more spiritual level. And so I was creating some stuff on nature and beautiful scenery and, trying to show something different. And there was more plans that were going to go into that, an expansion of that, but it didn't end up working out because there was definitely some high-level demons involved in this whole process, and they don't always vanquish easily. So that is what it is. So I wouldn't say that I returned to adult content, even though I made some stuff. I was just experimenting with things, and it was all really a spiritual experiment, a spiritual endeavor more than a greedy or lustful endeavor. So there's that. Anyways, back to the chat. That was really long. I'm sure we got a million chats. It's a bad thing. Let's see. Laura says, oh my, yes, so many people mix up sympathy and empathy. Oh no, we got a long ways to go on this chat, you guys. All right. We are gonna try to catch up. I'm gonna slightly tighten up the browsing to the best questions, comments only. So if I skip past your comment or anything, it's nothing personal. We gotta do something. I'm 109 minutes into this stream, and we are way behind. Okay, so Let's see. Let's see. Let's see. I think we're talking about the unibrow is a big attention grabber, which it is. Let's Frankie says model with a gap in the teeth, never fixed it because I knew people. They still eat 1 meal a day? Yes, sir. Sorry, I'm going embrace the uniqueness. Indeed, it's honestly probably not that unique. What I'm really embracing is the path of unindoctrination. You see, that we've all been indoctrinated to think that a unibrow is something unusual. But in fact, if people didn't pick themselves and harm their body and so on and so forth, or idolize other people, celebrities and things, and try to imitate them and so on and so forth, we would not think a unibrow was a unique thing at all. So, you know, it's all just a symptom of indoctrination. You see what I'm saying? Like if we grew up with anything, we would think it's normal. So, but sadly, we live in a world where we think it's normal to have to fit this little mold, and you know, everyone wants to put on their little suit and go to work and do their little job for their little numbers on their little screens, and you know, the people issuing the numbers on the screens want to make sure they get as many of those numbers back as possible, so they got something to sell you. One of those things is some eyebrow wax. The other thing is some conditioner. The other thing is some preservatives for your food, you know, so on and so forth. And all of it is essentially the same thing that they're trying to do to actual puberty nowadays with their puberty blockers and their sex changes and all that stuff. It's all geared to stop you from going through the third phase of human evolution, where you actually become, you know, whatever. And accessing the greater part of your nervous system, to which your hair actually is part of. Anyways, okay. He going fishing says, bro, if you do have... Oh, that's interesting. I'll actually bite on this. It says, bro, if you do have recessive genes as suggested, I think he's referring to Neanderthal genes, it would appear that you got the best from both. May I ask if you were stronger than your peers growing up and always wanted arm wrestling? I did. That's an interesting observation. I also have considered that as a possibility. More so is that I've also noticed, and while this might not be 100% in every case, if you look at, you know, historical grandmasters in chess, or even present day, you'll notice that the brow ridge is quite common in the chess world at the high level as well. So I believe that there's also a certain logical aspect to all that as well. But it could just be my observation. But look at Carl, you know, and others. Let's see. Thank you. Are you in the psychology of chakras? I'm just honestly, I'm winging it. None of this was expected. None of it was sought. I can't even call myself a seeker. I'm just a finder. It was an accident. And I've been doing the best to educate myself in post on things that have happened, so that if somebody asks, that I have a little bit more to say. But one thing that I never do, for better or worse, perhaps worse, is that I avoid learning about things in this space which I haven't personally experienced. You know, initially I started learning about stuff simply to try to find out if I had lost my mind and gone schizophrenic or something weird like that. And all of these lines of thought and research or whatever led me back to yoga. Not yoga like asana, but like other aspects of yoga. And so I am interested in the psychology of chakras. I'm interested in neuroscience. I'm interested in all the quantum mechanics and all the things that kind of tie into the realm of spirituality. And I'm interested in learning things from all different religions, all different philosophies, so on and so forth, because I find that they all kind of point to the same source, right? And that it's a largely misunderstood topic. And so really my goal is to bridge the gap between all these things. All these different people trying to say like, oh, my religion's the right one, your religion's the wrong one. Oh, you're gonna go to hell, you're gonna go to heaven. Oh, you're gonna reincarnate, you're gonna find moksha. All these different things. Oh, this is this is all about brain science, neurons and chemicals and so on and so forth. And then this is all about spiritual connection, so on and so forth. It's all one. And more importantly, it's all an illusion. Nothing exists. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm just here, like the hardest part for me to personally digest is the fact that I'm talking to myself right now. I'm not just talking to myself in the sense of like, I'm looking at myself and I'm reading things which may or may not be humans or chatbots or anything else, but that even if there is a human on the other side of these comments, that human is also me. You know what I'm saying? And that what I'm doing might be completely and totally a waste of time and pointless. But we are truly all one. Not only are we all one, all the animals, all the things, the rocks, the dirt, the air, it's all one. It's just a big dream. And it's really interesting and it's cool. And all I can think of is that even if it is a dream, even if it is an illusion, we made the rules. You know what I'm saying? All the science and all the little details, we came up with all that. So we got to play by our own rules, and we're playing by our own rules. And if our own rules means that we have to talk to ourselves going 8 billion different directions at once, fuck it. Let's do it. Frankly, a star says, I love these conversations. Thanks for being here. I don't have people in real life to discuss these things with. And yeah, it's a very specific niche. It's not a popular niche. It's gaining in popularity. But for those who have experienced it, for the knowers, not the believers, I think it is important to have an outlet and a community that's been through it and understands. Yeah, here we are. So welcome. Frankie continues to say, I think you brought up a good point. When people mirror you at first and love bomb, etc., it takes time to see through those masks. Yeah, it really does. It's there's something to be said, about red flags, right? And, in retrospect for me, it's like, I look back at my personal situation I was talking about earlier and I'm going like, how the fuck did I miss that? Like, really? I was so stuck in my unconditional love and light and forgiveness and staying in the moment, thinking, oh, the past doesn't matter, the future doesn't matter, nothing matters, we're just here right now, this is what matters. That I ignored every, like, not even just normal things, like I ignored things that like people are like, what? But there's something to be said about it. Now, whatever there is to be said about it, I don't know. I'm not going to try to put it into words right now. Maybe we'll talk about it another time. But yeah, I felt a certain level of airball to the sense of, I realized that I was going through a spiritual initiation. Like I realized that, you know, that was a manifestation of the simulation just being like, okay, you think you're ready for this? You think you're unconditional love? And it gave me something that was beyond my skill set. And so this is also why I took a few weeks to not stream and to rethink about everything, because I had to really reframe myself in my own mind, you know, because a lot of people have been on these streams and stuff looking at me like I'm some type of teacher or guide or whatever. And I might be a person with a lot of experience and so on and so forth, and I might have tapped into something which contains knowledge beyond my own person, beyond my own physical self or experiences within this lifetime. But that I'm still got a long ways to go before I can really consider myself qualified to be guiding people. You know what I'm saying? Like I can definitely offer my experiences, can offer my advice to some sense, but to think of myself as a guide was a trick of the ego. You know what I'm saying? The ego is very tricky. You know, when they talk about the devil, they're talking about the ego, right? And the ego really is the master of deception, right? The ego is so tricky that it will feign its own death to take control again, right? If you're living, you see, someone asked me a long time ago, and it's always stuck in my mind because I stuttered on it when the moment happened, but you know, someone asked me the difference between virtue and morals, right? And so virtue, right? We've discussed what virtue is, right? But morals are completely different. Morals are a set of rules that we create, right? To starve our ego, right? So we don't want to give it the fuel. We don't want to give it the power to do its dirty work, right? And if you are living by your moral code, you know, to the level that your ego can't gain any real estate, it can't gain any footing, your ego has another little trick that it will pull, where it will pretend to die. It will be very quiet. And if you start thinking, you know what I'm saying, that if you start taking pride in your spirituality, this is a big fall. It's a big fall. And that's pretty much what happened to me, is my ego convinced me that I could forgive anything. My ego convinced me, you know, that nothing could lower me vibrationally or take me out of my love state. And it wasn't true. So we have to create our moral code, right? And we have to live by that so that we can starve that ego until indeed the day, not that it dies, but rather that it serves us. You know what I'm saying? Because it has its point. It has the things that it's good at. It's just sadly all those things lead to suffering. It is the source of all suffering. So even physical suffering, let me expand on that, because the ego is attached to the body, but the true self knows that it existed before the body, and the true self knows that it will continue to exist after the body. So even physical pain can be attributed to the ego, because the true self knows that all things come to an end, including physical pain. So, it's a really tricky thing. And yes, people can be very well concealed. Some people's demons are not to be played with. They can definitely knock you off your horse, so to speak. Anyways, okay, back to this chat. Let's try to get through this. Trying to go. Let's see. Oh, here's a good question. Is it better to live in the heart chakra or the eye chakra? Okay. This is an abnormally good question. Okay. And I'm not going to say either one is better. Right? And I'm also not going to say that this is the way that I did it. I was fortunate enough to fill the gaps afterwards, right? I did it slightly out of order. But I've talked to enough people, so on and so forth, that I do understand that the order in which that you open your chakras and stuff is not always the same, right? And your main energy center can move around, right? And so there's pitfalls associated with both, right? Obviously, the third eye is a higher chakra, and if you can move your energy there, that is a better place, or it's a more holistic place to be, as long as your heart chakra is open to begin with. Okay? But you can open this chakra without having this chakra open. And that creates a monster. Okay? This is what you don't want to do. This is something that will create an extremely wrathful and capable person, right? And we have too many of those people already. In fact, most of the evil in the world on a large scale, I shouldn't say evil, but some of the more harmful people on the planet, they are that because they move their energy to the third eye without opening their heart. And so for someone that's consciously seeking spiritual expansion and growth, the first step should always be the heart. Okay? And there's a lot of different reasons. But one of those reasons is because the heart also, it ties the upper and the lower chakras together, right? But it's also because once you open the heart chakra, that you will have empathy, right? And this is, in my opinion, also like where some religions and practices spiritually are kind of designed with some manipulative intentions, right? Because if you open your third eye chakra, you will no longer have fear, right? You will understand with absolute totality that you are immortal and that you existed before this body and that you will exist after this body. You will also know God, for lack of a better word, on a very personal level, right? And you will become far more capable of everything in your life, except love and empathy. And so the first step is always to open the heart. And if you decide you want to go higher from there, that's a decision to make from a place of love and empathy. But it's not something to do otherwise. And sadly, a lot of religions and some religions and things like that focus on opening and bringing your energy to the third eye, because they understand that when that happens, if they can take credit for that happening, that what they'll have is essentially like a zealot, right? So they'll have somebody that is not only completely and totally loyal for life, and that will blindly, do as prescribed there, but they will do it without fear of death. And this creates a dangerous person. So whether or not you want to do that, one is better than the other one, they're completely different. But you should always open the heart first. And this is done through loving your enemy. Just to look at the worst parts of this world. The people, not that you don't like, but the people that don't like you. The people that want to harm you. The people that want to harm the world. The people that, just doing really bad things, right? And when you think about them, have compassion. Try to love your enemies. And it won't be easy. Beg, cry, crawl, do whatever you gotta do. But figure out, think about your enemies, nothing else, until you learn to love them, until you learn to understand them, until you learn to see through their eyes, to understand why they want to do the things that they want to do. And through doing that, you can open your heart chakra. And once your heart chakra is open, everything else is gonna be easier. You're gonna have more control. You're gonna be more spiritually complete no matter what you decide to do. Because you need this heart chakra open, right, to also be able to tie these two realms together, right? To ground your spiritual growth and things into... Sam, dude, you want to go to the room? To tie everything into reality. You're going to be able to operate on like a way different level as well, on multiple levels, right? But yeah, that was a good question. I hope that was a good answer. I don't know. It's a hard subject. Let's see. Max says, do your former coworkers of your former profession still reach out to you expressing interest? Interest in what? Definitely I've kept contact with some people. There are some people who still want to shoot and stuff like that. For me, I haven't really decided what I'm going to do in that realm yet. Initially when I went through my former trials and tribulations, I was going like, oh my gosh, I already started this project. I need to start it. I need a replacement and whatever. It was such a good idea and da-da-da-da-da. And like, now I'm just like, I reconnected and I realized that, there's really, like, I don't know what I was thinking, to be honest. Like, this whole spiritual path is so much more fulfilling, and it brings me such like a level of peace and contentment and just interest on like so many levels that like I don't even know why I did all that, but we're figuring it out, you guys. I'm just now, I'm honestly in a state of surrender. I'm trying not to think about stuff too much, yeah, people still hit me up. I just don't know what I'm gonna do. I might shoot, maybe not. I don't know. I gotta figure out where that line is. Like, I'm trying to also figure out how to, take control of the level to which that I interact with someone oracally. But I will say that my confidence is slightly rattled regarding all that. Like I definitely understand that like there are pitfalls there and that they are not little ones. They're like big problems. And I don't, I would like to make content. I would like to make something beautiful. I would like to do my part to like show people how to do certain things. But at the same token, like, I was in absolute fucking misery for like 2 months. Not just in the sense of like, okay, everyone kind of goes through some sadness, depression, whatever, when they go through a breakup, but like I remember like maybe like a year and a half, 2 years ago, I remember I had one day I woke up and I didn't feel my connection. I was like, it's gone. And it was horrible. It was the worst day in imagination. I couldn't even believe that I lived my entire life feeling like that, with a feeling devoid of this connection, right? And I just went through like 2 months of that. I mean, it was hell. You know what I'm saying? And I don't know. Nothing really seems worth risking that, but at the same token, like living in a fear state is one of the worst things that you can do anyways. And even if that fear is fear of losing spiritual connection, I feel like it's still like a really low vibrational like way to think. So I'm figuring all that out still, but I don't know what I'm gonna do with all that. Let's see. David Thompson says, the cryptic names may not be real people, but computer generated by the marketing platform to get you hooked. Exactly. This is true. We've seen this happen on many platforms. It either by the platform itself or by other weird schemes and so on and so forth. There is definitely an issue nowadays with bots and so on and so forth. I have considered that in the interest of combating that and to keep things interesting on these streams, that I might start switching to a interview-based format where I'll start having guests on here, and that maybe we can talk to some guests about some spiritual topics, their own experiences, their own beliefs, so on and so forth, and see how that goes. But I haven't got that far yet, you guys. I just got to Florida a few days ago, and I had to take a little bit of time to let my nervous system recover and feel safe again, because I was kind of in a weird state of being for a couple months. But we've locked it in. We're doing good. We're doing good. So we're ready to do something. We just don't know what that something is yet. But I agree. The bots is a problem, David. And yeah, we got to figure out what to do. But hey, if the bots ask good questions, then it makes for a good stream. Like, what the hell? Definitely this, for whatever reason, the 3 weeks off of streaming seems to have done good for our algorithm, because definitely this is the most traffic we ever got in the stream. Let's see. It says, thank you for that answer. I've been on a self-understanding journey after leaving the adult industry as well. I think I've been overthinking things a bit, though. It's normal. But in all things, this is a cool thing about spirituality. Is easy in the sense of only the ego thinks. You know what I'm saying? Anytime a voice is in your head talking to you, that's ego. You know what I mean? Well, not anytime, but most of the times. You know, spirituality is about silence. It's about introspection. It's about unlearning. You don't gotta learn nothing. Everything spiritually that you need to have the highest high that you can even imagine, like far more than what you can imagine. Everything you need to stay young forever, everything you need to feel God's presence in your life, to unlock wisdom, to be virtuous. Everything you need, it's already inside you. It's already there. You know everything already. In fact, you know things that you have no fucking clue about. You know some really, really advanced things. You know things that are like God level things, right? Like if you want to talk about greats of the past, go look at some quotes from Einstein. Go look at some quotes from Tesla. Go look at some quotes from all the great philosophers and so on and so forth. Once you awaken, you can never unsee the fact that all of these people were spiritual people. Even the most scientific ones like Einstein and stuff. You know what I'm saying? They will admit that they didn't come up with any of this stuff. That they downloaded all this stuff, right? That they tapped into a field that knows everything. You know, there's a saying, there's nothing new under the sun. And that's because this is all just a figment of our imagination, but it's not our imagination as we are now. As we are now is a figment of our imagination. As we truly are is as the one that created everything. The one that created the science, which we study and pretend like it has some answers for. But there's no greater lie than a half-truth, right? If you want someone to believe your lies, you tell them a partial truth, but you don't tell them the secret sauce. You don't tell them the most important part, and you sure as hell never give them the, you know what I'm saying, everything, right? Well, that's what the whole world is. That's what science is. You'll never understand everything, no matter how much that you elaborate. Even with AI and all that, the computer will never know everything. And you're surely as fuck not going to know as much as the computer. So science is even worse than like religion, right? None of it is going to help you understand the truth. Science will not help you. Religion will not help you. Nothing will help you. I can't help you. You know what I'm saying? Other than by telling you this one little caveat. This is where I can help you better than the other things. Is that I can tell you forget it all. Release it all. The only way to learn the truth is to unlearn everything that you've ever convinced yourself or been convinced by another that you know. To understand that you know nothing and that you never will know anything outside of connecting with the thing that knows all things, right? All great science, every computer and all this advanced technology and everything, this is all downloaded from the field. You know what I'm saying? And remember that nothing exists unless it's being observed, right? This has been proven, right? And so don't underestimate the power of manifestation either, right? Just because something is not true now, something is not true yesterday, doesn't mean that it won't be true tomorrow. You see what I'm saying? Because nothing is as concrete as they would like to make you think. There's very few laws in the world, right? A law being a truth that is always true, right? Almost everything in this world you'll find, if you really think about it, even the things that they try to say is dead science, whatever. It's all based upon statistics. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's true most of the time, right? And they'll call that science. It's not 100%. Some stuff they'll say that's a scientific law. It's always true, but I don't know. How far can we bend it? Nothing really exists. You see what I'm saying? So, basically just wipe yourself clean. You know what I'm saying? Empty the cup, as the Taoists say. Make room for something you don't understand. Instead of just filling yourself with more and more and more to try to understand things, to try to know things, whatever, just wipe it all free. Even your own opinions, like what is right, what is wrong, what is acceptable, what is unacceptable, and just become the observer. Observe everything as it is. And then, as you observe those things, try not to translate the things which you observe into something so weak as words. You see what I'm saying? Which sounds hypocritical to someone that just sat here and talked for 3 hours. But understand that words, which come in many different languages, not all the languages have the same words, so on and so forth. Words are the lowest, the absolute lowest form of communication. And the reason why it's the lowest form of communication is because it's very easy to be misunderstood, right? So anytime when you're using words, what matters far more than what you actually say is who's listening, right? And so this is where like my major breakdown and caveat comes with this hypocritical situation of talking to people indiscriminately on the internet, where I don't know anything about you. I don't know what your beliefs are. I don't know what your personality is like. I don't know how smart you are. You know what I'm saying? I don't know what language you speak. I don't know, whatever. Like, okay, yeah, we can, whatever. I don't even know if you're real. You might be a chat bot. But the point being is that anyone can watch this at any time, and I don't know anything about them. So whatever words I use might not be the best words for them to understand me. You see what I'm saying? So words have a big problem. Spiritually, you know, especially when it comes to self-understanding, self-healing, so on and so forth, the best, most purest practice is always silence. It's always introspection. It's always unlearning, unknowing, unindoctrinating yourself. So I'm happy we could connect on that. Let me keep going forward. And we're still talking about the third eye chakra thing. This is also, so this is what I was going to say is before you here's the problem with being too in the heart is that you're lacking all these things aforementioned by Douglas regarding the third eye chakra, discernment, foresight, and wisdom, so on and so forth, right? And if you have unconditional love and empathy and all these things without discernment, foresight, and wisdom, you can get yourself in some trouble. Unless you're like a master manifester and you can just manifest your way out of everything. But for that, you need the crown chakra. So let's see. Arnest Source says, I think I've been letting my hesitation and ignorance stop me from even getting started. Yeah, but who is that not true of? We all let hesitation, ignorance stop us from getting started. In fact, hesitation is one of the very few words that very perfectly describes that. You know what I'm saying? Procrastination, hesitation, you know, so on and so forth, always describes a state before you get started, right? So what's the key there? Just get started. Start hacking away. It doesn't have to be complicated. You don't have to read a million books. You don't have to, learn a million yoga poses. You don't have to do anything. In fact, you don't even have to eat. It's one of the most strongest things you could do is just not even eat. Just, you know what I'm saying? Start cutting away. Anything you can remove, get it out. You know what I'm saying? Okay, let's see. I gotta definitely, okay. Do you think my AD&D meds are messing you up? Yes, they are. I'm not a doctor. Nothing I say is intended as health advice, but fuck that shit. Thank you, Chirag. Good to see you. Long time no see. Sorry, I'm just now getting to your comment. Let's see. Real End says, this is a good one. The problem is that you wallow in the mud, you'll get dirty. That industry is disharmonic by nature. Yes, exactly. This is the problem, is that I really went in there thinking that I could wallow in the mud without getting dirty. And that, my friends, is the pitfall of the spiritual ego. So remember, the ego is the great deceiver. It will always encourage you when you're doing the wrong thing. So, yeah, no. The spiritual ego, by the way, and I actually gotta, okay, so I gotta lodge a complaint. Okay, not a complaint, but let me just give some unsolicited advice. Don't get attached to spirituality. Even if it's the best, most euphoric, most blissful, let's just even say ecstatic thing that you could possibly experience. Even if it can completely remove everything that's ever bothered you in your life, even if it can heal you physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, even if it can heal everyone around you, if it can make everyone's life better around you, all that. You must not become attached to it. Okay? The spiritual ego is the most difficult beast of all the beasts, of all the demons in the whole demon hierarchy to overcome. And it's also your greatest teacher. It's your guru. It's the one that teaches you how to become spiritual, how to really make the most of the energies in your body. And it's a really, really, really fine line, a tough line to walk. You know what I'm saying? Where your most prized and cherished part of your whole psychology and your being and yourself or whatever that's teaching you and making your life so much better in so many different ways. And it's inside of you and it's making everything just flow. And at the same token, you must not attach to it because it's extremely, extremely, extremely hard to overcome. And this is where we end up with people who are like evangelists, right? And they are never able to achieve the higher understandings and higher learnings. And they get stuck in like religious dogma and so on and so forth. It's because of the spiritual ego. And it has a lot of positive attributes compared to your average little demonic ego. But it does have one similarity, which is that it wants control. And it will not release you from attachment, that you will have to learn to differentiate between it and the true self in order to overcome it. So that's also a little something to note if you are considering to take a spiritual path in life. Or perhaps you're already on the spiritual path and you're like, yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. It's a beast. Let's see. It's so funny. I can't believe they're still doing the eyebrow stuff, but this is funny. Someone said, glad there's finally some highbrow spiritual content on YouTube. Shrek says, very deep meaning you explained. I'm happy. Hedonism is an ignorant game to play. That's true. It is. But, what's good for the goose is not always good for the gander. Okay? And as someone who was somewhat of I don't know if I love the word, but a hedonistic person for a long period of time, and that managed to accomplish something which many spiritual people dedicate their entire lives to accomplishing. And this isn't an egoic thing. I'm setting up for another point. And somebody that achieved that through that brings me to another largely misunderstood construct, which is very much a focus of my own learning and interest, which is the right-hand path versus the left-hand path, right? Or should we say another way of saying it is the path of renunciation versus the path of Tantra. Okay, now most people don't understand exactly what Tantra is. They immediately associate it with sex, but it's not all about sex. What these are is essentially the path of renunciation versus the path of embodiment, okay? And strangely enough, you can arrive at the same destination through either path, right? If you're really a beast, I shouldn't say beast, but if you're really, really feeling yourself in some kind of way, you could try to walk the center path. But that, as much as that might seem like the most logical way to go, no extremes, whatever, this is where most people will definitely get lost and perish. And it's also the path in which I would say has the most devastating outcomes. So would I say the middle path, to walk the middle path and fail is not advisable. But as I said before, we all have to, we have to embrace our own life as it was prescribed to us, right? We're experiencing this life right now, right? And you've experienced many lives before, which created your position within this life, right? And so, what is my path may not be your path. In fact, what is my path is most likely not your path. You see what I'm saying? And so, this is another reason why I'm not necessarily a good person to be a guide, especially for the larger population at hand. Perhaps I am a person that maybe someday will become well-developed enough to know how to guide a very specific type of person on a very specific type of path that leads to a very specific outcome, right? But most people would have horrible outcome trying to walk my path. You see what I'm saying? And my path is the middle path. You know what I'm saying? I have played throughout this entire thing from the start where I feel that I was gifted this experience and this opportunity through embodiment, that I was able to also embrace a certain level of renunciation, and that has guided me down the center path, which has been honestly amazing, but it's also been quite full of peril, right? And if you go back and watch all this whole 200 whatever hours of streams, watch the whole process as it unfolds and as it happened, then you will see what I mean. You know what I'm saying? Being somebody that was from the West, didn't know anything about this stuff, didn't have anywhere to go to let it unfold, and that was really just operating completely and totally intuitively on the whole thing, you'll end up seeing what my inner guru, my spiritual ego, led me to do, which was to give up my career, which was to give up all my physical belongings, which was to go and literally meditate in nature for like 2 years. You know what I'm saying? Fasting and, just things that most people couldn't do. If you got kids, you can't do it. If you, aren't, like I was in prison for 4 years at some point in the past. So it wasn't that much, it's not that much of a jump for me to exist with nothing. You see what I'm saying? Like the ascetic lifestyle was something that I was able to mentally comprehend and put myself into and survive, right? Most people can't do that. This isn't a brag or whatever. This is just me explaining. It's not for everybody, right? And then again, Some people have kids and things they can't go the renunciate path, right? Which is the most tried and true, which is the one that we know works for a lot of people, right? That if you are fasting and you're in silence and, you know what I'm saying, you're giving up worldly desires and you're, you know what I'm saying, you're practicing detachment, that you can awaken, right? But the person with a family can't do that. And this is where Tantra comes in, where embodiment comes in, right? And we're already 160 minutes in, so I'm not going to go too crazy down that thing, but this is something maybe we can talk about in another thing. But there's multiple ways to get to the same destination. And I'm not even saying that I'm at the destination. I've just gone somewhere. But yeah, I'm off track. So yeah, hedonism is indeed an ignorant game to play. And as aforementioned, great words. If you play in the mud, you get dirty. I learned that the hard way. But it's a moving target. We're figuring out what we're doing here, and I don't really know, to be honest. But this is my path. No one else has to really worry about that. Like, you guys will either end up with somebody you can look to for spiritual information in the future, or you won't. We're gonna find out. You know what I'm saying? But I'm still on the path, and I can't claim righteousness or guruship or anything because I don't really know what's going on. I'm just I'm in the, you know, I'm self-sacrificing. I am taking one for the team. We'll see what happens. Let's see. Oh yes, and semen retention. Let me tell you, this is a big part of it. So the semen retention thing is crucial as a man. This doesn't, you know what I'm saying? This is a man thing, but this is, in my view, why we have so many, like, don't get me wrong, there's definitely spiritually enlightened women in the world. There's definitely a lot of women go through Kundalini awakenings. In general, women are closer to the source than a man, in my opinion, because all women are part of the mother of all things, which is a step beyond what we think of as, or in my opinion, what most people think of when they say the word God. There's something even beyond that. There's something more than that. And women are a manifestation of that highest thing, right? That being said, her first creation, right, which is what most people would use the word God to describe, is something that a man has an easier time connecting with than a woman. And one of those reasons is because of semen retention, because there's this, and so that's part of the reason why I was celibate for a year. You know, and this is why we see so many male gurus and things, right? Because while as that thing which is connected to all women that all women are a manifestation of is greater, it is not the thing which you know, this is the thing that best understands that thing. You see what I'm saying? And so by becoming one with this first creation, this is the only way to comprehend this, if that makes sense. And so yes, semen retention is really a big factor, and it's also a little bit misunderstood. You see, semen retention is possible without celibacy. You see what I'm saying? Like, if you have absolute control over your body, like I do, but I'm in a very, again, my path is not everyone's path. My path is very specific and unique to me because I've had a very unique and specific life, as all people have, but there's some things here that, like, for example, semen retention, which are more possible for me than a lot of other people because I made a career out of controlling my orgasm for all my life, right? Not all my life, but for over a decade. And so, whereas most people who are practicing semen retention would be probably ill-served by engaging in sex because they don't have control over their body, they will have an orgasm, and if they do have an orgasm, they don't know how to separate their orgasm from ejaculation. That is not the case for me. You know what I'm saying? I can do both of those things because I have a lot of experience. And I can also have sex without the same level of attachment as the average person because I've made a career out of that as well for a long time. Right? So, like for me, example, if I engage in sex, let's just say every day or multiple times a day, this empowers me spiritually. This empowers me energetically because I'm still practicing semen retention when doing that. You see what I'm saying? Versus to another person could be completely and totally detrimental. Now, this is also like a big part of my own trials and tribulations of deciding what to do with my career and so on and so forth, because while I'm not completely opposed to sexual interaction or my past career or anything, I am opposed to releasing my vital essence. You see what I'm saying? So it's a tricky situation. So this is what I'm saying is like, it's listen, watch all the streams, whatever, but you know what I'm saying? I hate to be that guy, but do as I do, not as I say. Or in fact, don't do anything. Just do nothing. Go be in silence. You're good. Okay, let's see. Here's a great question that I don't have the answer to. Montserrat says, how different is a woman's Kundalini awakening from a man who is also going through their Kundalini awakening? I don't know. I'm not a woman. I know Kundalini awakened women. It happens, I think, probably more often even than men nowadays. It's just that I think that semen retention is such a powerful key and everything into the whole thing, that it's a little bit more straightforward for a man to trigger their Kundalini awakening through semen retention and fasting. Here it says, what if, Bruce, someone who love you, one side who you don't know but want to date you, does that? You thought stop dating, or person who sees vibe in you makes a great experiment? Well, this is kind of what we're figuring out, Jirag, is as much as we Sam, you are being disruptive, my friend. Come here. As much as I wish I had the answer to that, it is an experiment, and my previous experiment went far worse than expected. So I've only experimented with that so far, like one time, and it went so badly that I am apprehensive of repeating the experiment. But if the correct opportunity arises to where I feel that I could repeat this experiment with some level of confidence that there may be a less extreme demon attachment or whatever. Excuse me. Sorry, I couldn't resist. But a less extreme trial in that realm of unconditional love, I may experiment with it again and see what happens. But for the time being, I'm just thankful to San Pedro for helping helping me get through that, because I fucked up tremendously. It was a tremendous fuck up on my behalf. But it was a very big learning experience, to the point it was such a tremendous fuck up and such a tremendous learning experience, and the way that it ended up working out in the end was so well designed by the universe that I understand that the entire thing was an initiation, right? And that it was always meant to be, and it was always meant to go down exactly like it went down, like all things are, right? So, you know, if free will can lead to negative circumstances, then surrender can just as easily be the antidote to that. But what's smarter is to stay in surrender all the time. But you must do it consciously, right? And here the conscious is a very interesting word. Very consciously is key. But what's even better is if we can do it with conscious awareness. So we become consciously aware that we are conscious of our own surrender. Do you see what I'm saying? Meaning, an easier way of saying that is to trust in the universe and to read the signs, right? And as much as reading the signs is a slippery slope, can really get you into trouble if you're not a good reader. But if you are a good reader, surrender. Makes it easy. Let's see. Montserrat says, have you ever had an experience with a twin flame? And if so, how did you handle the intensity? I hope not. I mean, I hope not. You know, I don't know, to be honest. I just, this whole, I try not to give too much weight to things that I've read or that I've heard, so on and so forth. But when I read about the twin flame thing, it sounds right. I'm like, okay, yeah. You know, because the Tao created one created two created three, and three created 10,000 things, right? So that means somewhere slightly below God, or not even slightly below whatever the first thing that was ever created was. You know what I'm saying? It split into two, right? Which to me sounds a lot like twin flames, right? Now, drawing from what I've read about that, even though I try not to draw from things that I've read, but naturally doing so as part of being a human that makes mistakes, and acknowledging that the whole concept sounds about right, as does the whole karmic relationship, right? That I don't know. I just hope not, because I would still like, if the twin flame's still out there, I would happily dive down a twin flame initiation. You know what I'm saying? Like, I've had enough karmic relationships. And there was a person that initially triggered me, my own awakening. To which I have asked myself many times, is that my twin flame? Or was that just an example of a karmic relationship as well? Just a more positive one. But I don't know. I don't know. This grand illusion is full of all kinds of little side quests and games and so on. So maybe some of them aren't even side quests. Maybe they're the main goal. In fact, I have considered possibly that while, because those who watch my more recent streams when I was like fresh out of the breakup and I was like, oh, I think I need to prioritize a relationship and finding somebody and da-da-da-da-da. I haven't actually changed as much as like my feelings about it all has changed, my contentment level has changed, and my priorities have changed. I still feel that that's possibly the top priority. It's just that I understand that it's potentially like a far greater deed or far greater accomplishment than almost anybody gives it credit for, right? And that maybe that is the name of the game. Maybe we really do come here just to chase the other half of ourselves and just try to find them. But to expect that it will actually happen without some type of sacrifice or spiritual completion is about as dumb as it gets, right? Because what do you want to do? What, you're going to call in your twin flame without being in a sustained state of enlightenment? How's that going to work out, right? You find each other and then you move towards that together? Maybe. Could be. But that means that it will become very far more, you would think that it would be more difficult to locate that person if indeed they existed before being observed, right? Or, well, I shouldn't say or, and it'd be far more difficult or far easier to recognize that person when you do find them. So the truth is that if any of that is true, one side or the other, most likely both, then I don't know. Let's see, the Naturalist guy says, I don't know what this live stream is as I've randomly stumbled upon this, but you look cool as hell for some reason. What wise things do I know? I don't know nothing. The wisest thing I know is that I don't know. That's the wisest thing that I know. It's the wisest words that one can embrace. So I don't know. Right? And the reason for that is not because you can't know anything, but because everything which you do know, really, that you really do know, is beyond words. Can't put it into words. All things which contain the essence of truth can only be experienced, can never be spoken. This is why all religion is essentially wrong. This is why what I'm doing right now is wrong. This is why everything that I just said for the last 3 hours is wrong. But fasting, silence, semen retention, meditation, and things. Through those things, you can experience truth. And that's the wisest thing that I know. Janitor Germ says, new subscriber here. Glad I found your channel. Well, I'm happy to have you. Listen, you guys, I probably should have said this when the room was packing, but we're still doing pretty good. We've been maintaining at 40 for pretty long. So listen, don't forget to subscribe. We are on here at noon Eastern time. That's 9 a.m. Pacific time every Sunday, or at least we try to. We took 3 weeks off. But, and there's also occasional random streams through which will not be advertised, and we will not know when they will occur. So, for this reason, you must turn on notifications on YouTube if you want to be part of those random streams. Sometimes those are the best ones, because usually if I do a random stream, it's because something happened, I had some type of realization, and there was something that I felt was important enough to share, even though that I know words suck at explaining things. So turn on the little bell thing, get your notifications. And also, another side note is this was an unusual day where we decided to just have chaos in the chat. Normally there's like a 5-minute delay on the chat for subscribers only to chat, which usually stops all the caveman unibrow shenanigans, right? So it's important to be subscribed and whatever. We also have a Telegram channel, which I've been neglecting, and I have other socials if you want to there. Anyways, that was my plug for that. That was my one little thing. Don't know why I waited so long to do that. What? Someone asked what happened to the rest of the dentist over. I gotta, you know what? How many fortune cookies have you read to sound like this? You know what? I'm gonna let you stay. You're funny. And words are used to manipulate. Exactly. Even, you might not even, I mean, you know, yeah, for better or worse, words have problems. A lot. Let's see. Noise says, sorry if I accidentally fell asleep while the stream was still going on. Oh, my mod was sleeping at the wheel. Now we know what happened. Are you aware that you have one eyebrow? I am. We crossed this bridge earlier. Date a right girl and we'll blow your mind, but please continue live session on a daily basis the way you did in the past. Well, I might. I sometimes think about it. I commonly grapple, right, with the weekly stream versus the daily stream. The daily stream is Burnout City. Definitely hard to really get as deep into some stuff. Keep the quality up, but it does create kind of a more community feel, and I think that it definitely helps move people a little faster towards some type of truth, meaning experience which illuminates somebody to the reality that this is all illusion. But it's hard to keep up with. We'll see what happens. We'll think about it. Chirag says, sorry to say you, Bruce, but you are very sharp-minded. You know you can become a teacher, but you stood like a student and explore more deeply in spirituality. Maybe I'm wrong, but you are sharp-minded for sure. Well, thank you, Chirag. You know, being a teacher is largely dependent upon who your student is, right? It's easier to teach somebody who knows very little than it is to teach somebody who has experienced more, right? But more so is that it's dangerous to teach somebody something that you don't fully understand yourself, right? And when we're talking about an issue which can result in tremendous outcomes, even to the point of death. We're talking about someone can literally die, you know. It's hard to, in general, have the confidence to guide somebody like that. And it's also very karmic. You see what I'm saying? So, but it's also one of those things where, as I mentioned previously, someone who has initiated a Kundalini awakening, in many cases that might be similar to my own, where it was unintentional and without knowledge that it even existed or could happen, and knowing that you can't safely stop it in any given way, there is also a certain amount of responsibility, I think, that somebody has to take on whom does have some experience in that region, because of the nature of the fact that what's done is done and it can't be undone. You see what I'm saying? So once somebody finds themselves in that situation, they have to do something about it. And while that something is in a reality nothing, it's very difficult for people to do nothing. Stillness is not an easy thing. To find stillness within the mind and the body simultaneously is, in fact, probably one of the most difficult things that anyone can do. You know what I'm saying? Go ahead and try it. Tell me how easy it is. You know? And so, it's a tough, it's a tough thing. It's a tough thing. Let's see. Oh yeah, I made it to the bottom of the chat. Okay, cool. You guys, it took me a minute. Looks like I made it to the bottom of the chat just in time because we're starting to lose some people here. I hope that was a good stream. Sorry it was so long between streams. I did need a few weeks to reconnect. Hopefully, to the people that have been following me for a long time, that you agree and can also yourself see that the last 3 weeks was worth it, and that we have hopefully reconnected to our wisdom, and that it's not just a figment of my own imagination. All that being said, my dog wants some attention. The chat is done. I love you guys all very much, and I will see you next week, noon Eastern time on Sunday. All right? Peace.